we're going to look at the power supply problems on this original brick, and I believe that it's a problem with this part just here, so we'll just test that first. So I'm just going to plug it in and make sure that it's switched off. And then I've got some crocodile clips on the inputs. So we've got our multimeter set to DC volts. I've connected my probes to the crocodile clips, which are connected to the back. And now I'm going to plug in the power supply into my RCD, just in case something happens. You don't want to trip out the power in the building. I'm sure everybody would love that. So we're switched off, but even though we're switched off, we should still see our 5 volt coming into there. So my RCD is now active. So we can see I have to hold that cable in the right place before we see 5 volt. So there's definitely a problem with the power coming out of that point of the power brick. Let's just move this out the way for the moment. So these are sealed. There's no way to get into that without ruining it. So I've had a look around and I have 2 options to do this quickly. So I have this 5 volt module, AC comes in there, 5 volt goes out, and we can see that we have 5 volt at 2 amps, and on the original it was 5 volt at 1.5 amps. So we were within spec of the original power supply. And then I have this, which came off an old hard drive caddy, which is also 5 volt at 2 amps as well as 12 volt, and it's on a PS2 style mini DIN. But luckily we have the connections, so it's ground and ground, 5 volt and 5 volt. This is molded, so I can't take that off. So what I'm thinking is cutting that off, cutting the end of that off, and then just joining them together, and I think that will be what I'm going to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut this. We only have 2 wires on that. And I'm also going to cut one shorter than the other so that they're not at the same point. Now, looking back at our old Atari power supply, if we look at it from this way, we have 3, 5 and 7, which is ground, and 1, 4 and 6, which is positive. So let's just strip this back. All right, so I've got the multimeter set up to buzz. We've got the probe connected to the long lead, so looking at it from that side, so those 3 pins, which are 1, 4 and 6, are the positive signals. So the longer lead is positive, and I'm just going to tie this red wire onto it. just so that I don't forget. So that's that one. So now we have this power supply, and we're just going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to snip the end off. So I would guess that it's ground, 5 volt and 12 volt. So if we strip this back as well, put our probe on the white, and according to this it should be the lower 2 pins. And it's not. So white is 5 volt. Red is 12 volt, so yellow is our ground. So we want yellow for ground, white for 5 volt. So we don't need the red. And I'm just going to strip that back a little bit more. So we'll get rid of the red. So to match this, the white is going to the longer one, and the yellow is going to the shorter one. So I'm just going to cut the yellow back a little bit. And then we've got some heat shrink. To go over both of those. And then another piece to go over the outside of all of it. Okay, so good solder connection on there. Let's take a little bit more of that off. Okay, so there are our 2 connections. And there we have our heat shrink. So going back to our trip switch, which is switched off, plug into our power supply, and again referencing our old original one, if we're looking at it from this way, we have ground on that side, power on that side. Alright, let's switch it on. So we have 5.12 on all of the pins. So that should be okay to try it in the Atari. So just like before, we still got our crook clips on the socket, and we will put our probes on the crook clip connections. The Atari is switched off at the back. Right, switch on the LCD, and we have 5.11 volts on the socket. The socket seems good. I'm not getting any dropout on there, so I'm pretty happy with that, and I think that's going to be a decent enough power supply for me. So that's the power part sorted, and I'll probably look at removing this mod later on. So great, power is now sorted, so we can now look at switching it on and doing some testing while it's switched on. We're set up on the bench. I don't have space to put the monitor on the actual workbench, so we'll do the testing on here. I've got a bit more room around here anyway. So we've got the power supply plugged in, we're plugged into the AV on this TV. Let's switch it on. So it's working, but it's really noisy. If you can hear that. And I'm seeing lots of noise in the background, which wasn't there on the original power supply when it did work. So perhaps this power supply is not going to be very good after all. But it will do for the moment while I want to do the other testing, and then I can look for something else. So I guess we should run it through the basic hardware tests. So if we switch it on while pressing Option, so select start or reset. So select scrolls through, let's hit start. Obviously I will speed past this. It's not very interesting, and you've all seen this before. Okay, that looks good. Let's come back out. Select audio visual, start. So that looks good as well. All right. Keyboard. Control, Shift, Shift, and brake. And I know that you have to do like the Shift A, but it still doesn't light up. And I've also checked it in the DOS window, and it doesn't do the Shift characters. So that's, I think, the next thing that we're going to look at is the keyboard membrane. So I'm just going to support all of it and pull it out together. Now obviously we're going to have to clean all of this and pop the keys off and all that kind of stuff. I'm waiting for my light to come in to retro bright the keys, so we'll do all of that at that point. So now we're going to take off all of these little screws. Okay, and now we can lift that off. And take the membrane out. So we can see this is really dirty inside, so loads of work cleaning that up. For the moment we're just going to move this out of the way, put it somewhere safe, and we want to concentrate on this. This is going to be a massive pain in the... So if we look at this from above where the keyboard is, you can see that I've traced the track. We have Control, Shift, Shift and Brake, and they're all on the one loop that then goes up to there, goes round the back, carries on going all the way down to that point just there, and there are no other keys on that point. And then I looked at down here, and that is the control key, and that one goes down here, and then there are other keys that's on that path. So I know that that back connection is okay, otherwise those keys wouldn't work. So our problem lies with this connection on this top part. So we have the other sheet that goes on top of this that separates everything. For the moment, let's get this. So we're on buzz out. So if we go on there, we've got continuity. So those two keys are okay. And then it goes all the way over to there. But that's not okay. And then from there to there is okay. So we've got a problem with that whole path to there. Let's just check that again. Yeah, so that's bad. And we've got this open section just there. So that is also bad. And then we go from there to there, which is also bad. So it's pretty much the whole thing is pretty much trashed. Now I have nickel conductive pen that I brought from RS Components. I had to buy the crimps to make the SD Max, so I bought them at the same time. So let's give it a try going over that track and see if we can fix this. So this part, the tracks are pretty open. So I can do that section, no trouble. And then this one has got this thinner membrane that separates the two. So I'm just going to have to hold that back while I go over that part. I don't really want to break the glue on those tabs so that it loses its position. So that's our next job. I've never done this before, so this will be interesting. Danger. Highly flammable liquid and vapor causes serious eye irritation, may cause allergic skin reaction, may cause drowsiness or dizziness. Suspected of causing cancer. Shake the pen vigorously until the ball moves freely. Hold the pen at an angle and depress the tip against the surface. Draw the pen across the surface while gently squeezing the barrel. Let dry for 10 minutes before handling. Replace cap and store tip after use. So this is what came with my order. I brought solder wick and this pen, and they felt that they needed to send me all of this health and safety stuff. They could have just emailed it. I think I'm going to get masking tape stuck all over my gloves. Sorry. And I'm just going to hold this down. Might make it a bit easier to work on. I guess we could work back and see where we need to work. We're okay from the connector. So that section just there. So it's like it gets to a point where its resistance goes too high for it to buzz out anymore. So I think I'm going to do right from there to there. Sorry, I got things in my mouth. Like that section. Let's carry on up here. Okay, so on this side, I'm going to do that area just there, which seems to be affected. And then I guess we have to let it dry before I can do the other part. this isn't going to be easy. Yeah, I think I might have to get a different camera set up so that you can see coming in from that side. Otherwise, it's just going to be my head over the top. Give me a minute. Okay, we're going in magnifying time. Dries really quick. So I've definitely gone over a little bit on some places. It's quite easy to just scrape it off. Okay. I might just do that bit. So that doesn't look too bad. Looking up close. So now I know that I can just let it dry a bit and scrape off the mistakes. It's not too bad. I'm not so worried about going over the edges now. Okay, let's put that cap back on and we'll let that dry and take a look at it in 10 minutes. So we'll come back in 10 minutes. Right, I've let the other side dry and I gave in and I peeled off the middle bit. It's just held down with double-sided tape, so I can easily replace that. I've got plenty of that. So we've got to do the other side now, going from this joint, and there's a few points on here that look quite dark in many places, like on these joints just there, but I think they still connect okay. It's like 11 ohms resistance across there, and it buzzes out. And we know that it's only these other keys that aren't working. Right, when we get from there to there, there's no circuit at all. So that part just there is a definite. Let's keep working. Down. So that all that part's okay. So the 77 ohm from there to there. So I might do these parts where I've been I think it's mainly this part just here, and then maybe a touch up on some of the things where I've been probing and scuffed it a little bit. So I might do those first, and then that part especially. The end of the pen dries up really quickly and clogs up. Okay, so let's have another closer look, make sure I've not got anything touching a track next to it. Okay, so we'll let that dry. I think we'll let that dry for quite a bit longer, like maybe an hour or so. So we'll come back after that's dried and do some more testing. It's been an hour or so, and let's have a look at this. So we've got our meter set on ohms, and I'm just going to go from this point here all the way over to the edge connector. So from there to the point that I marked on the edge connector, we now have continuity. It's 400 ohms. I'm guessing that the paint stuff still has time to dry, but at least now we actually have connectivity from one end to the other. So all I'm going to do next is I'm just going to clean this up, and I'm going to stick this clear membrane back, and then I think we'll leave it for today, and then I'll check it again tomorrow and test it out. So I'm just going to clean up what was left of the double-sided pads with some IPA. So on this bottom part, there's like these little tabs, and I can see that that's wrong. So there's plenty of holes like all the way across the top where you can look to see how you've got it lined up. So that should be fairly easy to put that back together. So now I need to find some double-sided tape. So I've just got this double-sided tape. I'm just going to get rid of a little bit because it would have been sticky, not quite sticky enough. And I'm just going to cut off a square. Let's just trim that one down a bit. And then I'm going to trim what's sticking over the etch. So now that can go over the top. Let's peel off the tape. Come on. There we go. Okay. Line up at the bottom. Make sure everything lines up on the keyboard. That looks good. And then fold that over. There is our hopefully repaired membrane. We'll leave this overnight and we'll do some testing tomorrow. So while that's going, I just wanted to show you one more thing. So I mentioned that we're looking at doing an SD Max, which is a tape stroke disc replacement system, and that I 3D printed this connector. So with my slightly modified version of this, I've got the crimps to go in, and they actually go in really nice. These are the wires that it's recommended for the colours, and I've done a test fit, and that fits in, and that's nice and secure. So that's really cool. That means that we can pretty much go ahead with the SD Max. Here is my Arduino Uno and the Eligo touchscreen. So all I've got to do now is solder these wires onto the points on the bottom of this where the solder points are. It's just ground, 5 volt, control, RX and TX. And then put the firmware onto this, and we should have a working SD Max. But I'll probably do a separate video on that. But I just wanted to show that the connector is working, and it should be good to carry on. So I think that will be it for this video. We've looked at the power. Since starting this, I've actually ordered a power supply that was for sale in the UK on eBay, which is ready-made and was highly recommended from feedback. So that will replace the one that I've made in this video, and hopefully it'll get rid of the buzzing. And we just have to wait for the membrane to fully dry, and then we can try it in this system, and hopefully that fixes the keys. So thank you for watching this series. That was interesting doing this today. I was a little bit scared to start off with, thinking that it was going to be hard to do the paint on the traces. But as long as you scrape it off before it fully cures, it's really easy to just clean it up after you've put on. So I wasn't too worried then that we was going to put too much on and it would be really, really difficult. So I'll see you on the next video.